tiny URL takes you to this slide deck. I didn't want to make you type out the entire Google address, but hopefully that will stay there forever. Thank you, tiny URL, for always making it easy to share links. I'm not associated with them, I just like their product. So, solving secret sprawl. I'm curious, how many people saw machine identity and said, that's the talk I want to go to? And that was the part that drew them in. Awesome. I am obsessed with non-humans these days. I personally like the term workload identity, but non-human identity kind of won out as far as Gartner and a few other people. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's only two kinds of things in the entire world. There's potatoes and not potatoes. And that's what we did with access management. Is like there's only two kinds of things that access systems, humans and non-humans. That's not really super helpful. So OWASP further defined it. Tal and his team are here who helped write this from Asterisk. They wrote this, helped write the OWASP top 10 for NHI. Hopefully you saw their talk yesterday. But non-human identities are, from the application security perspective from OWASP, production software composed of a large number of applications which need to be identified, resulting in these NHIs. And they very often have secrets associated with them that allow that access. CyberArk did a little research in 2022. They came out with a report that said, in your average enterprise, we're looking at about 45 NHIs for every human that accesses systems. Here in 2025, the estimates are all over the map, but the average is somewhere around 100. CyberArk's latest research said it was just north of 86 or 87, I believe. But I've seen other reports that it's like 150. So I average out and say it's about 100. But let's face it, we live in a world of agentic AI, and it's moving faster and faster. We have never deployed more stuff ever. I don't know how many are up here. We're building machines that build machines, that build machines, that are building machines. The abstraction layer is getting ridiculous. The problem with all this access is we're trusting that this access is going to be used correctly. And in 1979, IBM had a slide deck that had this in it. And this is as true today as it was back then, 46 years ago. I know it's 46 because I was born in 78, and I am 47 years old. But we can't actually hold the computer responsible. Who read a few weeks ago when a Waymo got pulled over in San Francisco for making an illegal U-turn? Anybody see this article? Yeah, the cops couldn't ticket it because the way the laws are currently written, you have to give a ticket to a human being that's tied to a driver's license. So they're suing Waymo, the city of San Francisco. Last I read anyway. I don't know what that's going with, but we can't hold the computer responsible. So who's responsible? Everybody else. That's what this talk is about, ultimately, is who's responsible when the machine goes rogue, when the machine access gets stolen. Who is actually to blame? The horrible news is it's this person in the middle is going to get most of the blame, whether you like it or not. But let's talk about everybody else, because I firmly believe, I was talking to Dustin the other day about this, the concept of ownership in the organization is very different than the concept of ownership that you have in your head about how you own things. But we'll get to that. Before we go any further, I should do my title slide, my intro slide. Thanks for the great introduction earlier, but I'm Dwayne. I live in Chicago. I help people figure stuff out. That's been my mission in life for over a decade now. Ever since the boss told me, hey, we're going to give you this other job away from sales that just help people figure stuff out. And I've been doing that ever since. I've had a few different roles in that, but developer advocacy seems to be what I'm in. I got a security repo podcast called the Security Repo Podcast. It's a podcast about security. Check it out. It's on Spotify and whatnot. I had some awesome guests that are in this room on that talk or on that show. Like I said earlier, I love karaoke. If anybody wants to do karaoke tonight, let me know. I'm always down. And hit me up on social medias. I'm on LinkedIn and Blue Sky more than anywhere else, but Mastodon works. And there's an email if you want to get a hold of me. I'll talk about Git Guardian throughout this, so not really going to talk more about them now. Identity-based attacks are on the rise. It's morning. Identity-based attacks. There you go. That's the way you say it. On the rise. I've struggled with this concept of identity-based attack. Like, when you get into a system, there's only a few ways in. But the easiest way is just to assume someone else's identity and log in as them. Anybody read the Verizon DBIR every year? If you don't, you should. It's free. It's amazing. It's one of the best publications we put out as an industry, the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. This was the year that we saw credential abuse is the number one way, is the number one root cause for breaches. It's 22%. 20% was misconfigurations and infrastructure vulnerabilities. And third was phishing. Well, you think, wasn't a phishing attack the same as an identity-based attack? It could be. They could overlap. But this is also an identity-based attack where we stole somebody stole, I didn't steal it. Somebody stole a pipeline credential from an NPM package build system, stole it, and then inserted their own code at leisure into that system, resulting in Shai-Hulud, and before that, Singularity. Similar thing happened with Ghost Actions, but that's not nearly as popular to talk about than these. Red Hat, how did they get in? They stole credentials from the Salesloft breach. Because why on earth were their credentials stuffed inside of Salesforce? I don't know. At one point, Salesforce was the way we just wrote down the conversations we had with customers and managed. It was a CRM, customer relationship management system. And somehow over time, it shifted into this entire platform for business operations. And what do people do if there's an ability to fill in a field? They're going to put credentials there. We just know that's a fact. Weird. There's plenty more. We could go on all day. But if you look at most breaches, we're not doing zero-day backflip exploits of like we hacked kernel. No, we dumped credentials, logged in. Humans and machines are different. Hopefully I don't have to explain that to everyone, but there's some fundamental ways that humans and non-humans are different. Humans have a finite existence. Machines can theoretically live forever. Humans can MFA. Humans can passkey. Humans can use WebAuthn effectively. Computers, not so much. So traditionally, we've approached this problem of how do we grant access to these non-humans inside of these systems with this. Secrets. Take a lot of different forms. There's good ways to do it. There's bad ways to do it. But we've been doing it pretty much assign it a long key. And if someone has that key, let them do the thing. On the surface of it, that sounds reasonable from a developer aspect. From a security aspect, well, we see the results of that every day. So this was from, let's see, what language is this in? It was Python. So I did this one right before I spoke at DjangoCon a couple months ago. And I do this periodically. I'll ask ChatGPT, specifically ChatGPT, that's the one I like, to, hey, build me code. It gives me an example call to an API from a secured API. Every single time I've ever done this, this is the first way it tells me to do it. You're in an OWASP event. Hopefully you're all OWASP members and you're security minded, and you can see the immediate problem here. Yeah, just paste in your access token there. That's how we're going to do it. You know that. How many vibe coders do you think know that's really terrible? I'll let you think about that. But we know the answer, unfortunately. GitGuardian, part of what our platform does is we look at every single new commit and public event that hits GitHub public. Public events are something that was private that becomes public. We look at every single commit, every single action, or every single public event and say, hey, is there a secret in here? We scan for secrets. That's what GitGuardian, we're a secret scanning company. We put out a report every year with our findings. So this is for a prize. This is Price is Right style. So if you've already looked at the slides, if you downloaded the slides and are looking at them, don't answer. everyone else, if you already did that, like, let me know, and I have other prizes for you. Thanks for being ahead. But for everybody else, if you don't know, how many secrets do you think were added to GitHub in public in the year 2024? Not cumulatively, like on the platform of GitHub, but just in the year 2024, how many hard-coded credentials got either committed or made public in 2024? I need hands. Don't just yell at me. 10 million. This Price is Right rule is closest without going over. 50K? 3 million. 20 million? 5 million and one? Honestly, I'm impressed because nobody's ever gotten that close before. So 23,700,000. Oh, he almost had it too. If you didn't have to, you blocked him. 23,770,171. Just the year 2024. 4.6% of all repos added a secret. That's a 25% year-over-year increase using the exact same methodology. We went back and re-examined 2023 using the exact same everything. It's 25%. We went back and examined 2024 with the same methodology we used in 2023. It was also a 25% increase year-over-year. Not good. And there's this false sense of, we got to get better. We're getting better at this, right? Because GitHub's got push protection, right? Like, how many people have ever been trying to push a secret and GitHub's like, no, you can't do that. Yeah, that's it. That you can end around it. You can force it up there. There's certain things like AWS keys that it will quarantine those. If you push a GitHub personal access fine-grained personal access token up, it will invalidate it. It's like, you can't do that. But 58%, and it's not on these slides, it's in the report, 58% of all the secrets we find don't map to prefixed or known patterns. They're what we call generic detectors. So they're used contextually in a way that grants access. So a bearer token, a base64 string that's used like password equals, and a high entropy base64 string. Basically, if anybody ever uses internal systems, those don't map to what GitHub looks for. So that's part of why we're seeing this giant increase, this consistent increase over time. So we send out alerts. So part of what we do also is a pro bono, we call it the Good Samaritan program. How many people have ever got an email from us that you accidentally pushed a secret into GitHub public? Nobody? You guys don't write enough code. I get them occasionally. But yeah, if you push a secret out into public, we find it on GitHub public, we're going to send you as the committer an email saying, hey, you did this, please fix it. But we've been doing that since 2020. Or 2018, since we've been doing that. We went back and looked at all the secrets that we found in 2022 that were valid then, or a subset is like 11,000 we found in 2022 that were valid, and we retested them in 2025, and 70% came back as still valid. Yeah. So what do we do? What do we do about this? Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot to say that part. It's called api.github.com/events. It's the public feed. Like, literally, by the nature of the product, it is public. It's a fire hose. It's 1.4 billion commits a year. But, oh, yeah. And the fact that we do this, we know for a fact nation states do this. We know for a fact adversarial groups do this. Have you ever heard of the shadow caches? There are shadow caches of GitHub. So you pushed it up. Oh, my God, it did something bad. I'm going to take it down immediately. Nope, it's gone. Just assume that every attacker in the world has access to it at that point moving forward. BoostSecurity.io, I think IO or AI. Boost Security out of Canada, they do the same thing, but they're looking for vulnerabilities. There's a bunch of companies that access the feed and are trying to ingest the whole thing. We've just been doing it since 2018. So what do? Well, first we breathe. This isn't a joke. I mean, the picture's kind of funny, but we have to remember we're human, first and foremost. And it's something that gets left out of so many conversations I have about security, and especially these days as we're pushing more and more AI into everything we talk about. Why are we in security? To protect the humans. This is a true story. Part of the reason I stay in security, as frustrating as it is, like I kind of want to go back to DevOps. I kind of want to go back to be a platform person in my life. But Lori Children's Hospital in Chicago got ransomware 2 years ago. And kids missed their cancer treatments, and appointments got rescheduled and pushed. And I am so angry about that to this day that I'm staying in the fight. And I have to step back and breathe sometimes, like, all right, I can't fix everything. We can't fix the whole world. But what we can do is make sure that we are securing it as best we can. And we're pushing not for checkmark compliance, but we're actually putting controls in place to eliminate the dangers. But that only is possible if we take the time to remember why we're doing this, take care of ourselves, put your own oxygen mask on first, and breathe. So next time you have an emergency, remember, Dwayne said, it's okay, step back and breathe for a few seconds. Say the Bene Gesserit litany against fear from Dune. You'll be fine.
Just ask how many puppies died.
Yeah. Hey, when's your talk, man? When's your talk? Oh, man, sorry I missed it. I'd ask the same questions. But what do we do after we breathe and get centered? Let's put a virtuous cycle in place. This is how everything improves in pretty much any system you ever build. You raise awareness. Then counterclockwise, go figure out the processes to start working on this. But without the awareness, you can't work with and collaborate with your team to figure out the process. And only then, go figure out where your tool gap exists. Tools should be not the first thing you grab. Tools will not fix anything if you don't have your processes figured out. You want to see proof of this? Look at the world of development with agentic AI. Here's a bunch of tools. It's going to fix everything, right? Then figure out where those gaps are. Train people into those gaps or about those gaps and how to use those tools to raise better awareness, to go build better documentation around your processes. To then go automate those tools better. Figure out what gaps you have, raise those awareness, start working on the process. And if that's the model you're thinking, it's no longer, oh, how do I stop these attacks? How do I make the world safer? It goes to, how do I improve our processes so we fill these gaps and stop the stuff we can stop? And hopefully stop ransomware. And OWASP, once again, is there for us. And I am so grateful for this top 10 list. I love all the top 10s. If we've been doing the top 10 the whole time and everyone would have been on board with this, we might have better security in the world, as we heard from our keynote yesterday, which I absolutely loved. But the top 10 exists because non-humans aren't humans, and they do have their own set of concerns. I am not going to walk through all of these. I will let you study these a little bit later, but I think it basically boils down to like three big categories: long-lived credentials, ownership, and complexity. But the ownership problem is really, really a hard problem, because is it on you in security to go fix this stuff? The answer is yes. But is it on the developer to go fix this stuff? The answer is yes. Is it on your DevOps team and operations teams to make sure that this stuff gets fixed? And the answer is yes. Is it on your exec team? Yes, so on and so forth. IAM is an interesting one, because IAM has been historically laser focused on the joiner, mover, leaver problem of humans. Someone's joining the organization, they change their access, they leave the organization. That's it. We have never treated computers this way. We're starting to, thank goodness. But IAM overlap with non-humans is very recent. Like, I can find the first evidence that Okta talked about this in 2022. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Surface accounts and all that, whatever. But IAM as a profession, as a role within the organization, IANS, the organization that studies executive pay and whatnot, said in 2024 at RSA that in order for an organization to be mature enough and large enough to have a dedicated IAM person that reports either straight to the executive team, straight to the CISO, or to the board, you're about $5 billion in revenue before you probably have this person. Most organizations struggle with who owns Active Directory. You ever want to cause a panic? Walk into your IT room and say, hey, who actually owns Active Directory? Jerry? Maybe? Does he still work there? Ownership is weird, though. I didn't think it was weird before this year. Literally, I thought I understood ownership. I thought, well, we're going to map ownership, because how many people talk to their IAM people or is like, well, we need to figure out who owns this. But step back and think about that for a second. Like, personal ownership is pretty straightforward. I own this shirt. I own 4 of these. They're the best shirts ever made by Dickies. They're work shirts. They're indestructible. I've spilled so much coffee on all of them, and they still look the same. Not great, but they look okay. I can burn it in a fire. I could give it away. I could turn it into a tent. I could do many things with this shirt, but I have the responsibility that if I left this in the middle of traffic and I caused an accident, they would say, hey, you own that. That's your problem. Let's take a simple example in the enterprise. Who owns your email system? Think about it. Is it the same person that pays for it? Well, do you call the person who signs off on the check to pay for your email when it goes down? If an attacker gets in and takes over your email account, is that the same person you call? Ownership, I firmly believe, inside the enterprise, inside of organizations, is a shared basket of responsibilities that's contextually dependent in order to define who is in charge at that moment. It's a shifting thing, contextually dependent on what you're talking about. Why I like this diagram, and this is literally from Wikipedia. Almost all my images come from Wikimedia, but that picture in the middle is a Venn diagram from the Wikipedia page on Venn diagrams. I love it because this is kind of how risk works inside of organizations, at least from what I can tell and from my personal experience. Everyone has their basket of things they care about a lot. But let's face it, you don't care about red lines from legal inside of contract law and a sales negotiation, but they really care about the word indemnification. Your executive team cares about revenue. Hopefully, if you're sitting in this room, you care about security and uptime. DevOps, or an operations team and DevOps, I kind of lump them together, but operations, what I really mean, care about uptime and throughput and costs. Your executive team cares about costs. Do your devs care about cost? Not so much. Do they care about uptime? Well, they're going to get fired otherwise, so yeah, they probably do. But how does this back to NHI? Because I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Who implements NHIs? These people. There are a bunch of things we're telling them, hey, you need to care about this stuff. At the end of the day, though, what they care about is, does the access happen? A machine can't stop and ask for more access. It just can't. Machine just stops. Production stops, you lose your job. Who's paying for this stuff? Who pays for we spun up more entities? Well, the executive team ultimately has that budget authority. And your DevOps team ultimately pays for it out of their budget because it's operational, right? So I'm going to talk about how to go talk to these people a little bit later. That's the core of the rest of this talk. But how do you talk to these people about this problem? I think it's you talk to them about risk in their language. If you go in and talk to an executive and say, hey, this breach might cost us money. You've just said, we're going to take on yet again more business risk. And an executive business risk is we're going to lose money or make money. Everything is that risk. Production go down, we lose money. Maybe get breached, maybe lose money. See the difference? Versus, hey, we're spending way too much money on vaults. If we do a vault reduction program, we'd save about $700,000 a year. Oh, why haven't we done that already? Pretty much the same argument. It's just from two different perspectives. Putting it in their terms about risk. I have a whole other talk about that. How you talk to your IAM people is different as well, but I took those slides out because this is not a talk about IAM specifically. But we got to get everybody on the same boat. We got to get everybody saying, yes, we actually have to solve this at scale. So what do we actually do? Go back to the top 10. If you take this to a developer, they're going to glaze over their eyes and say, this isn't a solution, this is a set of great ideals, wonderful, and they'll go back to doing whatever they were doing. I think you can lump 5 of these into one solution, one thing to work on, and that's the one thing I want you to raise awareness on. And if we could just do this, so many of our problems go away. Eliminate long-lived, overprivileged credentials. Very easy to write, very hard to achieve. But it's getting easier, I think, I hope. Should be, technically. But it's kind of like saying the secret of flying is just don't fall down. It's that easy. It's just don't fall down. And if there's one word that I keep coming back to in all these conversations I have, it's actually governance, control and governance. But governance is the right word. Not governance from the GRC perspective. Nothing against GRC people. I 100% understand that perspective. But governance is truly like, what controls are we putting in place to ensure we're doing this correctly, the most correctly in the safest way possible? That's what governance looks like to me. It's not a set of boxes and say we did it or we didn't. It's like, no, we're constantly improving, and we'll put a model in place so we're constantly iterating on getting better. So how do we talk to the devs and say, hey, how do we, don't do this. Don't put the hard-coded credentials in our stuff. Well, if you already use Kubernetes, hopefully everybody here already uses Kubernetes, the answer has been out there for like 8 years. It's called SPIFFY, Secure Production Identity Framework for Everyone. Who here knows SPIFFY? Oh, you're gonna love this. So, anybody know what Brisky is? Brisky is when you buy a new device from a manufacturer, like a switch or a router, it contains a certificate inside that's signed by the manufacturer. It says, I made this and you can trust this to put it on your network. Then when you put it on your network, it will use that certificate to create a local certificate and say, yes, this device can be on the network legally. Like, we expect it to be here. This is kind of the same thing for processes, for Kubernetes pods, for workloads, entities, machine identities that aren't physical hardware. Like, when a service is born, we can cryptographically prove that is truly the thing, because trusted boot, all those wonderful tools we can use in the creation process say, yes, this pod is 100% expected to be there, and it's truly the thing we expected. Therefore, we can inject with an API at birth time, at creation time, we'll give it an ID. It'll have a namespace and a trust boundary and be able to explain itself and where that came from. So when it goes to do any work, it can get to that trust boundary and say, hey, I am me, here's my ID, and exchange its identity token for a workload token. That can be a JWT or a X509 with an expiration of like 15 seconds, 15 minutes, an hour. And if that leaks, the amount of time an attacker has to use it is so small. You could theoretically do it, but like in the NX Singularity attack, it was a month. It was a month between they stole the credential for the CI pipeline before they injected their own stuff. So it took them a month to figure out how to craft that payload and like actually get it in there. So give them a much shorter window. And then when the workload's done, it gets its identity back. And if everybody's thinking, that sounds exactly like OAuth. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We're finally at a point where we can put OAuth 2 against processes and against machines. And of course, federate your certificate authorities and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole book about this, and I highly recommend. It's 198 pages. It's free, spiffy.io/book. If you take nothing away from this other than reading this book, I will have succeeded in my mission in spreading the word about this. Because this idea works. It's federated identity at scale. There are attack paths against it, but it means taking over federated certificate authorities, which is really hard to do. Not impossible, but the difference between taking over a certificate authority versus I found this key and it lets me into your database is night and day from an attacker perspective. They're like, okay, that's all well and good. That's cloud native. That's Kubernetes specific. Good news, this is coming as a standard for everyone right now. It's called Whimsy, which is a great name for a very serious topic. Work-led identity in a multi-system environment. They have the definition I love for when I'm talking about NHIs. This is actually clean, simple, beautiful, wonderful, and it's being argued about right now in email threads, whether this is too broad or too narrow. A running instance of software executing for a specific purpose. Oh, that's just so clean. I love that. Whimsy is in draft 4 right now, and at the next IETF summit, I forget when that is, but there'll be like 2 working group meetings about this to codify and make it an RFC. So anybody here not know what the IETF is? Okay, IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, they're the people that maintain the standards of ICP, TCP, or TCP, IP, HTML, HTTP, like these standards. That's the governing body that says this is how it works. So when you build something to work on the internet, you follow those protocol and standards, and we all make the agreement that this is how this works, and we built the internet. That's the RFC. This is the team behind RFCs. One of the working groups, this is one of the working groups that says, okay, this idea of SPIFFE, this idea of OAuth for machines is a really good idea. So good of an idea that we're going to make this a common standard way to do it. So when you as a vendor offer a solution, this is one of the paths you can use to, across systems, make that agreement that we're going to federate the identities in such a way that we can use OAuth for machines. And you can subscribe to their email change as well. This is part of why I love computer science, is that it works on the back of open email forums, just email threads. I love it. And if you're a Kubernetes user, Future's already here. Future's been here since May. Just for some reason, this got overlooked. Since 1.33 in Kubernetes, you've been able to federate the identity of the pod so you can do image pulls from short-lived, automatically rotated workload certificates or workload tokens. Meaning, if your developers did it this way, as opposed to long-lived service accounts, an attacker gets it, it's like, okay, I can't do anything with this. Moving on. Versus, hey, I got a service account token that never expires, or it's like very long-lived. I can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. So if you take nothing else away from this talk, I'm not done yet, but if you take nothing else away from this talk, and you have Kubernetes inside the house, inside your organization, go start asking this. Like, hey, what, are we doing this yet? Because the sooner we can get developers and DevOps people to think in these terms, a federated identity, the better. We're like, okay, great, but no, providers, that's Kubernetes. Like, providers aren't doing this yet, right? No, they all are. They all are. All the platforms are doing this. They've been doing this for months. There's blog posts going back to April about how to do federated workload identity. Future's here. It's just not evenly distributed. Like that, we're here. But this isn't the easiest path yet. Not yet. There are companies working on making this the easier path, but these are, if you work with any of these companies right now, and there's a bunch more, like Ambit's not on here, there's a bunch of other providers, but go ask your providers, like, hey, I want to move to federated workload identity for working with you. And they should have an answer. And if they have no idea what you're talking about, maybe find another vendor. Maybe. Not everybody's going to support it, not immediately, not right away. And we can't get there unless we figure out what we've done so far and clean that up. Now, for Greenfield, we can. If you're starting a brand new organization, you're going to build from the ground up, sure, wonderful. That is not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about organizations that have legacy code. How do we fix that in the near term? What are we trying to do again? Oh yeah, this. Are we trying to make our applications more secure? Sure. This is the thing I'm obsessed with. Again, DBIR, 22% root cause is this. This is what this looks like in production. And if we don't provide a better path than this, all they're going to do is rotate that secret and put the next one there and reset the clock on how long before we get breached and someone finds this. I think the game plan's pretty straightforward. Find all your secrets, properly store them, adapt better developer tooling, continual secret scanning, and automatic rotation. Because first part of threat modeling is finding all of the things. Know what you're protecting. Your teams are keeping track of all these keys they're making, right? All these identities they're making. Like there's a master list of these somewhere, right? There's a main list you can just go check out and say, yep, these are all the credentials we have everywhere. That's silly. No, they're all over the map. Part of the struggle with non-human identity is it's so broad. Does your team account for the number of databases you deployed the same way they account for the same number of end user devices, the same way they account for Kubernetes pods? No, of course not. That's silly. What do all of those things have in common? They all access things. What do they use for access? Credentials. What form do credentials generally take? Secrets. Map all the credentials. You've therefore mapped all the things they go to. It's a specific worldview, I'll admit, but it's very pragmatic. I've talked to many IAM people like, yeah, that's actually a pragmatic approach. Because you're not your password. Never claim you're your password. But your IAM team knows you have a password, and they're keeping track of what that password can access. The A in IAM is the only one that matters. Attackers are not attacking your identities for the sake of attacking an identity. They're definitely not attacking your management system, because why would they do that? What they're after is the access part, the A in IAM. And they can find that A in all of these places. So go find them first. I personally have a personal favorite of how you do this on this list. Bet you can't guess what it is. It's not Git leaks. But if you're not doing anything right now, even grep is better than nothing. If you're like, how would I even start? If you want to tear apart some open source and see how they have done it pretty well, I would recommend Amazon or AWS's Git secrets to start with, because that's how I learned how Git grep works in depth, because that's what they use internally. Never going to say a bad word about anybody that's doing this and trying to help solve this problem. But again, I have a personal favorite on this list. Next, we need to properly store our secrets. Here is the most highly successful diagram I've ever drawn in my life. I am very bad at art. This is how secret managers work. Hopefully you all know what a secret manager are. Anybody not know what a vault is? Well, you do now. Vaults are where you put the secret to be stored encrypted at rest, very, very secure, and then pull it through a path at runtime into the application or service needed. And hopefully you've architected in such a way where you're not holding on to it forever inside of that pod or wherever you're putting it. What's up? Yeah, encrypted on MTLS all the way. MTLS all the way. You can do this. Hopefully, if you got nothing else going, you're using one of these locally, or not locally, on your cloud provider, because they all work. I'm not going to say one's better than another. They all work, but they meet different needs. Like, obviously, you're going to use AWS if you're on AWS. You're going to use Azure Key Vault if you're on Azure, obviously. If you're across systems, you're multi-cloud, you're hybrid, there's tons of examples. These are just 4 that we work with at GitGuardian. And I mentioned CyberArk research enough that it sounds like I work for them. I don't. Even these providers are starting to get to a point of, hey, how do we let our secret manager work across systems? AWS has got secrets anywhere now. That was one of the pictures I showed earlier when I was showing like federated identities. One of the paths you can go with them is you can do federated identity with their system and then use that as a multi-system secret manager. I'm not going to get into the details of that yet because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around exactly how that works. It's fairly new. But they all basically do this. The only line to worry about is the top one. The rest is just example code to show that that call worked. But this is how you replace that hard-coded secret. If I'm an attacker and I see this in the code, I'm like, great. I either have to go figure out how to bust into the vault and find that base level cryptographic key that lets me into the vault to decode this thing, or I move on to an easier target that has hard-coded secrets. This should be fairly straightforward for a developer. Like, hey, developer, just put the call to the vault in there. Every developer I've ever talked to and said, hey, why don't you just use the vault call? They're like, do you know how hard it is to figure out where that call is if I'm not the one that put it there? Or they're saying, yeah, but that process takes forever. Well, that's where security engineering should be working with them. I'm not a security engineer, and I'll never claim that glory. But I've talked to enough security engineers, I've talked to enough CISOs, I've talked to enough directors of security that say the most effective way to affect security for their teams is to go sit with them, learn their workflows, and say, hey, wait a minute. There's an easier path here, and it's a safer path. Let's figure that out with you. And once you understand that workflow and where to meet them in the middle, such as Git is one of the greatest things ever invented. It's version control, but it's also a communication channel. It's also time travel. It's also multi-dimensional travel. Git is weird. I'm thinking about going back and teaching Git again for a living because I'm obsessed with like how awesome it is. Inside of Git, though, there is the hook system. Have you ever heard of GitHub Actions? Yeah, it's built off of this idea of Git hooks. You do a thing, you reach a certain threshold within the Git workflow internals, and it triggers a script run. It goes and looks in this folder called Git hooks. And, oh, I guess I took that slide out. Anyway, it looks and says, okay, here's the 17 hooks. I'm gonna run one of these if you cross the threshold. Pre-commit is one of these hooks. Pre-push, pre-commit message is another one. Linus had some very specific needs when he was building Git. And this is what this is. In 2005, Linus Torvald, the whole project for building Linux quit using BitKeeper because they didn't want to give an open source license. They were like, no, it's our product. You can use it for free for now. They're like, no, we'll just go build our own. And they built Git. Thank goodness. 97.8% of all developers on Earth use it daily. What you can do with this hook system is start putting in scripts that do things like, if you tried to put in a hard-coded credential, go and see if that key exists in the vault already. If it exists in the vault, give me the path back. Take the path, sub it in for that credential in the code, and then I'll go ahead and commit that. I have seen this work. Another path is we'll go ahead and stuff it in the vault. Does this work out of the box with like a one-liner from a CLI? No, absolutely not. This is what security engineering is supposed to do, though. Like, where are these gaps? Where can we tie scripts together to make things easier? That's the job. That's the work. We wrote a reference implementation with CyberArk on how to do this over a year ago. The tech wasn't there yet, but it's maturing very quickly. We called it Brimstone. They called it HMSL, Remediation Integration Service. It does a slightly different thing at the end of the day, but the reference is there. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about this in depth. And finally, we've got to rotate at scale. In 2025, this shouldn't be a magic trick. This should not be something that's shocking that you can rotate things automatically if they're in a vault. AWS has a pre-written script for every single service they make that does this. If you're an AWS secret manager and need to rotate things that are in the secret manager for any of their services, they already wrote the script for you. All you got to go do is deploy it. That's all you got to do. There's blog posts about how to do this, in-depth blog posts about how to do this. And it's not just AWS. I'm just picking on them because I like their scripts. And when I originally wrote this talk, that was the one I picked. But they all do this. All the other providers do this. Aquilus does this. CyberArk does this. It's just you needed somewhere to run a script to call an API to do a thing. AWS has the APIs built in. Other services might not. Up to, you got to go look and figure that out with them. And if you're using a service that won't let you invalidate a secret from an API call, question that. You should be able to very instantly, in the middle of an incident, say, I know this secret doesn't break production and just poses a bigger danger than the risk of downtime. Kill it right now without even thinking beyond that. Or, hey, I'm pretty sure this is going to cause downtime. Let's go do the proper full rotation with that, but we still at some point are going to need to revoke it. APIs are the way to go. And this is a great conversation for security and dev to have. But this is an expensive in resource and time problem, not so much in the money department. It's getting cheaper that way. But this goes back to the conversation of who owns this stuff. This is great in theory. It's great in theory to talk about whimsy and talk about federated identities. Do you have the political will to go pull this off? And the answer right now is nobody knows. Some organizations do. I've talked to many organizations that do, that are solving this, and they're generally very large organizations that have figured out, like, wow, if we just got rid of long-lived hard-coded credentials systematically and then started putting governance around these non-human identities the same way we govern the human joiner, mover, leaver problem, which is not a solved problem in any way, shape, or form. I'm not here to say we've solved human access, but we start treating it with the same level of dignity and respect it needs to be a front-line problem we're dealing with in security. That's going to take political will and budget you don't have. We already spend millions of dollars a year on the IAM problem for humans. Part of the reason the IAM teams don't want the responsibility of NHIs is because you're telling me the problem is going to be 100 times worse for things that I can't physically see a birth certificate for. Wow, that sucks. No, all we want you to do is put your Rego rules against, like your RBAC rules against this system over here. Oh, I can do that. And we need a little bit of your budget to do that at scale. But it's going to keep us all safe. Exec team, we're wasting money and we are making ourselves a giant target by not doing this. We're wasting money? They're not going to hear the other part. They're just going to hear the wasting money part. I didn't talk about it with vaults, but one of the biggest issues with vaults is the idea of vault sprawl. The idea that you don't have one vault. If you had one vault, it'd be awesome. But the average, we sat on a survey a couple years ago, and the average people were willing to admit to is we have about 6 vault solutions. I told someone in an insurance company that once, and they laughed in my face. It's like, you mean 6 per team, right? Like, every team uses their own vaults, and then every project uses multiple vaults, and then every time you acquire a company, you inherited however many vaults they had. Redundancy hurts everybody. Your dev teams just want to get the job done. Give them a better, easier, faster path. Federated identities are that. It's namespacing and allow listing. That's all it is. Ultimately, we all work for the same company. Not in this room, I mean in general, inside of your company, you work for the same company. We need to get on board with the idea that we're protecting each other and we're making our lives easier. My favorite quote, I think in the recent memory, of somebody that works for a very large company in Chicago, she told me when she goes to work with, she's a security engineer, and when she goes to work with developers, one of the first things she says, I'm not here to get you in trouble. I am not here to make your job harder. I'm here to make sure that we stay safe and that you're ultimately doing things faster and better. And if you start the conversation that way, that, hey, we're on the same team. We just want to get this done together, but we're going to need to raise some awareness. We're going to have to talk about processes with that. And eventually we're going to have to buy some tools. And we're going to have to spend some capital and some resources and some time. And there's a guidance to do this. There's plenty of guidance to do this. But if we don't do it right now, I don't know what this will result in. I'm Dwayne. I live in Chicago. Thanks for coming to this talk. Check out the Security Repo podcast. I think you'll like it. And if you ever want to get a hold of me, there's my info. Quick plug, Get Guardian, who I work for. Shocking, I know. We help people find hard-coded secrets where they're supposed to be, where they're not supposed to be, give you full-blown inventories, and can help map processes around to make sure your governance around your non-human identities is something you can live with. And again, the slides are up there on tinyURL. Feel free to get them and share them with your teams. And thank you very much.